So let's talk the road to 100,000. Your latest report from Bloomberg Intelligence says, hey, it's a possibility this year. How so?
Well, I've been looking at this for about a year, and it's more based on questions I've been getting. Okay, McGlone, you keep saying 100 grand, give us good reasons. So I finally decided, all right, let's put out a deck that shows some of the charts. And one thing I missed from that I'll mention first is ETFs. There's still a high probability that the U.S. is just going to follow Canada, maybe just a futures-based, Bitcoin ETF. But the fact that there are now over 30 applications, and the fact that money is migrating from the U.S., notably from Cathie Wood and ARK, towards Canada, the pressure is quite strong and high for the U.S. regulators to say, all right, we're kind of missing out here. We need to do that. So in the bigger picture, the foundation to me really got started last year, and I'll leave you with this. It's very, from a commodity strategy standpoint, is somewhat simplistic. Supply is declining, demand is increasing, and then you look at the history of Bitcoin, typically years after a halving, which is when you cut supply, which we did last year. It usually has some of its best performance, which is prime candidate for 2021.
Okay, so to that note and to that point, on the ETFs front, I mean, in order to move the needle, I mean, could you see that happening by year end? I mean, December's right around the corner here.
Oh, yes. In fact, potentially by the end of October, but a futures-based ETF, meaning, kind of where you track most commodities, crude oil, corn, copper, everything. Most of those are tracked via futures, with the exception of gold, which are physically backed. So it's just a matter of time. And Gensler even hinted at that. And it'd be a nice little baby step for the SEC. So it makes sense. And that would open up, now futures-based might not be the best thing, but it's better than nothing. It follows Canada and just opens up that legitimization window for a massive amount of money inflows. And one thing I have to point out is, so if I had, kind of own your mistakes, and if I had just kind of focused a little more on Ethereum this year, I'd be at that 100,000 mark, because Ethereum's up the equivalent. If Bitcoin just catches up to Ethereum, of which there's been some ETFs launched in Canada, it would be at 100,000. In fact, it'd be close to 130. So I think that's part of the reason it's probably going to get there. And the question is when. Yeah. So first of all, Bitcoin has a history. It went up to 1,000 and held resistance there from like 2013 to 2017, and poof, bumps up to 10,000, gets a little bit overdone, and then held and locks in around 10,000 right till about the end of 2020. And then poof, it pumps up. 2019 and 2020 has its resistance, and once it breaks out about 10,000, it's more likely to go to 100,000. Yeah, now that's the history. And then you look at what's happening. The halving is cut the supply, and then you look at the simple macroeconomic things. The thing that I've underestimated this year is how much there's been disdain and outflows from gold, and people giving up on gold and going to Bitcoin and Ethereum, basically putting Bitcoin and Ethereum in the same bucket as gold. So as we speak, gold is down about 7% on the year, and Bitcoin's up almost 70%. Ethereum's up almost 400%. And to me, that's just this, the techie geeks inheriting the earth, taking over. I mean, sure you hear that a lot, but it's just happening, and it's that concept of 24/7 price discovery all the time, and Bitcoin's limited supply overtaking things like gold. And to me, that's really what's happened. Then there's the macroeconomic, and we can fully expect debt to GDP's, QE levels, fiscal and monetary stimulus to continue to keep an unlimited supply of fiat currencies, meaning that base of how you price Bitcoin should continue to have unlimited supply of fiat currencies versus limited supply of Bitcoin. Means the price must go up by rules of economics.
You mean all the fundamentals that should have been supporting gold way above 2,000 an ounce, right, Mike? But to the point of, is Bitcoin taking a chunk out of gold? From what I hear from you, yes, it is. I spoke to the folks over at Wells Fargo. They're seeing that as well. But I'm hearing such differing views on Wall Street. There's some on the camp that say, no, not at all. Gold still does its thing, as it has its own proprietary reasons to own it. It's not, it's not getting hurt at all at Bitcoin. So I'm hearing such differing points of view on this topic. Do you have any other insights you can share there? Are you seeing any hard numbers?
Oh, yes. Clearly how numbers. You can just see the amount of ETFs and demand for Bitcoin every day increases, just looking at the headlines. And I see outflows in gold. Just look at ETF holdings. But the bottom line is, Danielle, you have to consider your source, our sources. And that's one thing I love about this position versus when you and I talked maybe 6 years ago, I was kind of more biased, as I had to be biased towards bullish gold. Now I'm just completely neutral, getting it right. And first, let's look at it this way. From a prudent money management investment standpoint, if you have any type of money in gold and bonds and you're not allocating to Bitcoin, just a small portion, you're at greater risk of looking like you're being left out or falling behind and lost in the woods versus just allocating a small portion. That's happening. That's a fact. And then there's a simple fact of performance. So I look at it as, to me, the naysayers are falling, against Bitcoin, falling every day. They're now minority, and they've all tilted the other way. And the performance just keeps showing it. And then I look at, here's a thing I'll leave you with, is one of the most notable things that's happening in crypto assets is the trading of digital dollars, crypto dollars. So if you look at just one, and I'm getting this to gold, but if you just look at Tether, this is the most widely traded, the daily volume in Tether is equivalent to about the top 10 cryptos, including Bitcoin and Ethereum. So that's what's happening organically. The world is going to this ability to transact 24/7, virtually no cost, with instant settlement, and you're doing it in dollars. That's happening with Bitcoin, and there's tokens to do that in gold. But to me, that's the world that's happening. It's in our faces, and it's happening so fast, a lot of people are being left behind. So I fear that people who keep pointing out how gold has been the hedge forever, I agree with you. And so far, and I'll leave you with this. And before the automobile, the horse was the best form of transportation, and how we measure it. That's just happening. And something's got to trip it up. But every day that Bitcoin doesn't fail, it's moving in gold space. And this year is a good example of that.
Okay, so let me ask you this. On the path to 100,000, what does it look like? Are we expecting more consolidation? Would you expect another correction and then it's a straight up? What does it look like? How does it play out?
Well, I think we've already had the significant correction this year, which is part of why I republished that article that I put out. I actually republished it kind of almost a year ago, because it's one of the best ways to create a foundation in the markets is flush out the excessive longs and the speculative excesses. And that's from an ex-pick trader and ex-trader. I remember being stopped out and realizing, oh, shit, I got stopped out. That's going to make the market go up. It's just usually the way it works. So I think that's what's happened. So cryptos have had a great foundation. They've corrected. They found a good base around 30,000 in Bitcoin, and now they're starting to recover. To me, it's a matter of time they go higher. And there's going to be bumps in the road. And the key, most notable market in the whole world that hasn't had just a little correction is the stock market. Someday it's going to have that. So I look at it as just a matter of time. And also the reasons that Bitcoin corrected were very bullish in the long term, i.e. pushing back on the energy consumption. We all know just the process of humans harnessing energy is part of human advancement. And then the discombobulation with China pushing back and pushing out the miners is, I think, making the U.S. realize it more. So maybe we should embrace this with proper regulation. So I think that's coming. And the key thing I'll end with is, in terms of regulation, the U.S. is probably going to focus on trading of digital dollars and a lot of these 12,000 other cryptos. But there's not much you can do with Bitcoin. It's open source software that's developed organically. And then there's this key thing from a U.S. and a leadership standpoint. It's a massive job machine, which creates votes. And like I said, it's creating it's really enhancing the dominance of the dollar on a global scale. And I think the U.S. is smart enough not to mess that up.
To that point, I'm happy you brought up regulation because Ray Dalio came out saying, well, if Bitcoin is too successful, right? And I think 100,000 would label it definitely successful. If it's too successful, regulators are going to step in. They will stop it. And you're saying you can't stop it?
It's almost impossible. So I've gone through those iterations numerous times. And how do you stop Bitcoin unless you change the laws in this country? We do have free speech laws, meaning the only way I see to really stop it is to ban the internet. Because if you put some kind of restrictions on it, I mean, I don't, but you can hold Bitcoin on your own wallet and and your own keys, and no one's going to know about it. It's just good luck, and it'll just migrate to other places that aren't pushing back. So I think that's and also key thing about that probability, Danielle. I've heard it for years. It's been declining every day. Now the fact that Ray Dalio says it, I think is a little bit out of context because he owns Bitcoin. In fact, he even says it's part of my gold diversification, which is a small portion of my portfolio. But he owns it. He's probably going to buy more. Every day that goes by, people like him tilt over the other way. There's one person still left. That's Peter Schiff, but he's he's getting crushed in his gold, and he just hasn't admitted that yet. But if you just added 1% of Bitcoin to that, on a dollar cost average basis, you might get fired by his clients pretty soon. But that's a key thing to remember. Probability of banning the U.S. has been declining. Adoption and demand are increasing. Follow the trend.
Okay, last point. If someone, if our viewers are watching and they're on the fence between Bitcoin or Ethereum, I know you're not a financial advisor, but what should you be looking at? How do you choose? Do you add both? Do you choose one over the other?
Diversification. Exactly, diversification. The way I like to describe it is you can't, in a prudent money management way anymore, consider yourself a decent fiduciary if you have any kind of gold, and if you don't have Bitcoin in that bucket, the way I view it, that's my view. But you also have to have some Ethereum in there too. So the way I look at it is, performance instills competition. Ethereum has a lot of competition, but Bitcoin and Ethereum in the same bucket. How you weight it, I don't know. In the Bloomberg Galaxy Crypto Index, I like the way that does it, and hopefully that's going to migrate. But to me, they both belong in together. And I'm bullish all of them. I'm still bullish gold. I'm becoming very disconcerted, but they all belong in the same bucket together. And the key thing I'll leave you with, Danielle, people are starting to realize is this is a great diversifier, Bitcoin and Ethereum. And certain to people who hold portfolios of bonds, most notably in Europe, where they're getting 0 interest rate. Elon Musk said that his bank accounts get nothing. I mean, you got to default to TINA. There's no alternative. And what's really performing? Where do you see demand? And where is all the technology going? Where's the world going? It's going digital, and Bitcoin is becoming a global digital reserve asset in the world, rapidly going that way.